Live stream is commencing.
Thank you.
As long as the sound works, that's okay with me.
Yeah, well, and I'll try to keep attention to you. And welcome to everyone who is joining us by live stream. We're just waiting for one or two more people to join us, and we will be starting the meeting momentarily. So welcome. I assume, oh, there's Carrie, good. I know Carrie's got, hi, Carrie.
Hi everyone. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Carrie.
Good, thanks.
Welcome, and we are live. And I think that everyone that was expected at the beginning of this meeting is here. Is that correct, Wendy?
I just don't see Grant on here. Oh, there he is. He just popped
Grant.
on. We're good.
It's amazing, eh?
Thank you.
Tom will be joining shortly as well.
Okay. Oh, wait. We'll wait for Tom.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Grant.
Hi, Grant.
Hi.
Tom. Perfect.
Hello.
Welcome. What a team. I'm excited to see everybody.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thanks, everyone. Sorry, just traveling from another meeting.
That's the same with me. Yeah.
It's amazing how we do that. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome all of our folks that are joining us on the live stream, and we're pleased that you are taking time out of your day to join the Quality Tenant Engagement Committee of the Toronto Seniors Community Housing. Just in case you're on the right Zoom, it's good to know what you've logged into, and I would like to welcome everyone from our team that's supporting this meeting and our board members who have joined today. My name is Linda Jackson. I have the pleasure of being the chair of this committee. And I would like to start before my remarks with the land acknowledgement and take a moment. We honor the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nation. Ontario was covered by 46 treaties and other agreements, and it is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements include the One Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, and their agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant, and in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We would like to acknowledge those who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Thank you. And I really, when I say these words, I also encourage people to not just read the words, but to think about what action you take and what actions I can take to actually honor those words. And I'm going to move to the chair's remarks just briefly. Once again, we have a busy agenda, and hopefully we will get through all of that. And I just wanted to make a few comments before we get to the agenda items. So our last meeting, believe it or not, was 6 weeks ago. And there was a number, if you attended, and I hope many of you did on the live stream, attended that meeting. It was a very important meeting. There was a lot of presentations on our quality improvement project, the Health Commons report on health and wellness initiatives, and these items were brought forward to the most recent board meeting and also received great interest and lots of discussion. Since the last Quality Tenant Engagement meeting, there's been some role changes, and today you will see a combination of updates on both of these, on written materials and some verbal updates. Most importantly, we will hear from our CEO, Tom, and it's nice to see you, Tom. We'll have an update from Tom. We will review an updated TCHC performance dashboard, we will have a report from the Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity, and I'm so pleased that Summer's here today to actually share that and to meet with us. This is the first time we've actually had a report from OCHA at this table. And we'll have some updates on the quality improvement projects, the interim strategic directions, follow up on the Health Commons report, as well as the development of the new tenant engagement model. And if that wasn't enough, there will be further reports and action plans at the next meeting, and these will reflect some of the action items from QTEC and the board. To conclude, we'll have a brief discussion on upcoming meeting dates. And for note, Tom will also briefly address the upcoming board and committee meeting dates in his update in today's agenda. And thank you. So we're going to move on to making sure that we don't have any conflicts of interest. If there are any conflicts of interest, can you please identify them at this point if you have a conflict of interest? Hearing none. We will move to the approval of the minutes of the QTE on September 12th. And I do want to thank you for thank everyone who actually participated in putting those minutes together, because it was quite a hefty agenda. Any comments, questions about the minutes? Hearing none, I will look for an approval of the minutes of September 12th, 2022.
So moved, Carrie.
Carrie, and a seconder.
Brenda.
Brenda and Jim, thank you very much. All in favor? Great, we'll pass that. And we also have an approval of the closed session minutes. We had a very small, a short meeting that was in closed session, and I need an approval of those minutes as well. And I think Carrie and Jim, you were both there. I'm looking at you if there was any changes.
Oh, no changes.
Great. Thank you again. And Jim, you're good to second?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor? Great. And we will move on to then oh yes, we actually is this an additional, the June minutes, Wendy? That's correct,
Yeah,
right?
it was just a procedural. You had asked if there was any feedback, and there was none, but there wasn't the official approval
Yes,
process.
yes. So
we
this
just
was
wanted
a
to follow.
chair actually not doing her job very well. So this is a correction, and thank you. And it shows the detail behind this operation. Our June minutes, we didn't actually we didn't have any questions, but we didn't have an approval. So I wonder, Carrie and Jim, if you were willing to actually approve those minutes as well.
Yes, certainly.
And a seconder, Jim. Only because I know you were both there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All in favor? Great. And probably the next substantive item is did I get the approval of the agenda? I don't know if I did. I think I'm going to just go back there, and now I'm double checking myself. So I'm going to just go back for a moment, and we have to see if we can get an approval of the agenda for today's meeting. Anything missing? All right, and I'm going to ask Carrie and Jim and Brenda whether you can, and I think Free can also move things in this. Just looking for procedural. So we have a small number of members. So Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly.
Thanks, Linda. I didn't know whether I was allowed, given that I'm an ex officio, but if it is, I'm happy to.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so we all in favor? Perfect. We've got that approved. Okay, so we can move on to the more meaty items, the action item review. And if people had a chance to, there's been quite a bit of work done. I wonder whether we might want to put that document up to.
Could you? Yeah.
I think it would be helpful. Sometimes it's hard to go back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Great. Yeah, so I did want to make sure that people know that we were actually following up on a lot of items that came forward at that meeting that were in the agenda that are in progress. And if there's any questions with regards to that, staff to bring back a weekly use of space schedule for each building's common room. And that is in progress. Staff bringing back a list of how many buildings do not have a common room. And I believe that was sent out. Jim, I believe that was something that you asked for. And I was actually surprised to see, I think it was only 3 that don't have a common room, which is interesting in terms of for those buildings. Yes, Jim.
Well, I was told at the meeting that was held here last Wednesday that they're working on how to get a meeting place for us here in the building.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So thank you for bringing that forward, Jim, and know that you're not in, there's not a lot of buildings that actually are in that situation of not having a common space. So
I think that's great that that so many buildings do have a community room.
Right. Yeah, I thought so too, actually, Jim. And then the next item is in progress, and it's adding the red, yellow, and green flags to the operations dashboard. Thank you for following up on that. And we're going to be talking about the data that we're collecting on bed bugs and pests later on in the agenda, but that is in progress as well. And we had a request to improve the website to make sure that it's easier to find the committee materials, and that's completed.
Just a question on that. Is there, I haven't actually looked at that website for a while. So is there a special tab for board members, or how does it show up as?
You want me to answer that, Linda?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've created on the About Us dropdown, instead of just going to the board, there's also committees tab, and that links directly. So it's right from the home page.
Thank you then.
Yeah, Linda, if I may, just to follow up on Brenda's question, I just found it a bit difficult to navigate still. I tried to go on the website today to find this agenda and actually couldn't find it.
Okay, so thanks for that feedback. And because I haven't been on it since it's been updated as well. So maybe what we could do, an action item for us board members, is to actually go on and
check it out. Yeah.
And check it out and provide some feedback back to the team.
Yeah, I found the board agenda easily accessible, but not the committee's agenda.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that feedback. So we'll add that to the action item just to check on that. Provide data upfront for all QUIP working groups and bring back to the committee. Staff need to include the measurement metrics, and this is in progress. And I think we will have a bit of an update on this later on in the meeting. And the report back on the listing tour, and specifically how TSHC is working to improve translation, and interpretation services. And I believe that that's going to be discussed later in the meeting as well. Yes, Brenda. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. What's QIP?
Oh, the quality improvement plan.
Quality improvement. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. All these initials.
Projects, quality improvement projects, right? Because
great.
I have a QIP at work, and it's a plan.
Yes.
It's a project, right? Yeah. And then our last one, I think we are going to speak to that in the update on the listing tour. So thank you. I think it's worthwhile to take a look at these action items, because this is where we kind of know that we're making some progress on items that have been brought forward. Anything else? So that was an item for information, so I don't need an approval. And why don't we move right into the update from Tom, because I think that will actually further illuminate some of the questions that came up in the action plan. Great. Over to you, Tom.
Yeah, the chair. Thanks so much, Linda. Good to see everybody this afternoon. I will start just with I have 3 areas to comment on. The first is around just around the KPI work. The secondly is just around the org structure, and then third is the whole future board meeting schedule. And for the KPI, you are going to see the KPIs, and we've worked it so that they're going through this committee and then to the board. But I just want to share that we are beyond kind of what you see today, there still is a lot of work in the background around deciding those indicators that we want to present to the committee of the board and the board in terms of a dashboard, and as well other indicators, which we'll use kind of operationally, right, to support the work that we do. And right now, the communications team is working with operations to really understand, not only how we want to present a very kind of visual and kind of comprehensive set of kind of balanced indicators. So, you'd see vacancies, arrears, but which ones address tenant engagement, right, in our partnerships. So we're working to create that kind of visual and information as it relates to the dashboard. And then also, the board is aware that there are these other indicators that we collect which drive our work, but we don't want to be presenting 50, right? It's what are those key ones that will help present the progress that we're making in our areas of operation. You hear that balanced scorecard. So that's just wanting to share with this committee that that's what we are working towards. Because right now we're finding there's information, like indicators through operations, the integrated service model, and the 100-day priority. So we want to really create one document, one dashboard for our boards and for the public. So that's just wanting to update on that element. And then around the org. Oh, go ahead, Brenda. I'll take questions as I go through.
Just a question. This dashboard is of interest to me. It seems like we have to ask the question, what is it we want data for? And obviously it's to make decisions, it's operational, but also policy. And is your working group identified what additional measures you want to track? Have you identified, I mean, I see all the stuff here, but have you identified separately so we can highlight that this is a new metric we're asking about? So for example, I don't know, I can't give an example, but language issues, representation, I mean, all those sorts of things. And I just wondered if, because in terms of myself as a board member, I only contribute so much in terms of operational stuff. Really, it's really policy that is our focus and broader issues. And am I getting the nuanced information that sometimes is often needed, the hardcore stuff? I mean, yes, it's good to know the number of arrears, but what is that a function of? What does that represent? Is that something I need to monitor because it represents something else of importance other than just a dollar amount?
Yeah, that's really, I think, really, kind of important points, Brenda, because it speaks to, I'll talk first about this kind of dashboard, right? So what are those, what are those 20 or 30 indicators that we want to use and people understand, right? So if we use one or two to represent arrears, people understand what those are, but it is the way to say to our board, to our public, to our tenants, in these areas, in these indicators, we are achieving, or this is what we're moving towards, and this is our target. To the other point, there will be, but we can't be presenting, I don't think, 50 different indicators.
That's right.
To our public. But if you just, as you've asked us for some of these specific indicators around, language and other aspects of our tenancy, we can have those to provide to you, or if there's at a point where the board wants an update on those, or if the board decides that those are important enough to be on the dashboard, then we will create that. What we just, our work will focus on at this point in time, defining all those indicators, and then what will be on the dashboard for the people understand what we are achieving.
So to those points, who has access to the dashboard? I mean, where will it be?
So if I could, I mean, this hasn't been discussed at the board level, but to me, this should be live data. If you go on the website, you should be able to see our performance metrics. I mean, from my experience in long-term care, we posted them right in the home. Our dashboards for everybody to see. And so to me, it should be live data, live information.
And second,
I think, Brenda, you do raise a question in terms of our board role. I mean, a dashboard is going to be used at different levels of the organization.
That's right.
And I think what's important to us as board members is to make sure that, like, we're not doing the work. We need to actually know that that certain metrics are being met and where there's a variance. And I think we're in early days. So right now we're actually really presenting a format. I think actually, and I think Tom, you're raising a good recommendation that we actually start with those areas where we know that we've heard feedback from our tenants on what's most important, and we've heard from many of the board members what's important, and that we focus in on those areas first before we add a whole number of other metrics. So we're going to actually talk a little bit more about the dashboard in the next agenda item, but there was really good questions.
Yeah, okay, that's good, because I do want to, I just spent the morning having this discussion about access to information and the issue of race-based and language-based data. And everyone says we don't count it. Oh, it's so difficult. Well, I've been hearing that for years. So I want us to make it a commitment, whether it's done through dashboard or other separate reports. I really don't care.
Yeah, and
I cannot.
Why don't we make that an agenda? Because I think that
that's fine.
In itself, is something that I think our board needs to probably have a discussion either here or at the board around demographic data, race-based data, and and where that is. At this point, I think that it's worth tabling.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Good. All right, and then the other item I just would like to touch base with the committee is on the organizational structure. And organizational structure, I understand it does rest more with the corporate governance and HR. But why I did want to raise it here is, with the interim structure that we have in place, it does have an impact, on the staff supporting this committee. And I just want to ensure this committee with its members that, this interim structure is covering off those areas of focus. And so just confirming with the group that in the interim director of operations role, Brad, raise your hand there. It has the structure for operations, but also Jay Preet's area with the tenant engagement and the wellness and the partnerships that rests within operations. So Carrie, I think you have been raising that. And so just wanting to confirm that that is, although it's not visible within how we've titled the structure, the work is being covered off and being supported with Brad in operations. And then with the director, we've called it strategy and communications. Our interim director there is Grant. That communications piece is under the strategy and working there to get covered off. And just, Grant and Brad work very closely under operations, and already, I'm seeing that there is that, there's a lot of cross work and integration within those two continuing. So just wanted to confirm that with the committee today.
And I think Carrie, you had your hand up, and then Brenda.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Linda, and thanks, Tom, for that. Is there any reason why we might not be able to provide Stack and tenants with a copy of the interim work model?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it would help people to see, and I think it was great that it wasn't introduced before, because we've had to make these changes, which is understandable. But I think it would help people to actually see, I recognize Grant, I recognize Brad, whomever, and how things will go throughout.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. And even on the listening tour, right? They see Grant and Brad, so it helps there. And there is a Stack meeting, right? Or we're getting that organized, so we'll be able to go over that as well there. So
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
So we'll add that to our action list, that the information be shared with Stack and other tenant groups. Great, thank you. Tom, is that the end of your report, or is there anything else?
I have one other point that I just want to make around just the future board meetings and scheduling committee meetings. And once again, this is a discussion really more that we will be undertaken at corporate governance, right, and HR, but it was raised at this committee. So I just want to kind of confirm with this group that we are taking a more kind of robust, kind of comprehensive information to the corporate governance committee around meetings and timing of meetings. And I can share that we're looking at the board meeting once every 2 months with the so that there would be the committee meeting 1 month and then the board meeting the following. And I think once you see the schedule and the work back that happens around, getting the agenda set up, the AODA compliance, and the agenda review with the chairs, this will keep us very busy, even to do every 2 months, board meeting every 2 months with the committee meetings, and the subsequent ones. So, but I just wanted to share that with this group because it was raised, but we will discuss it more corporate governance and taking something forward to the board.
Brenda, did you want to raise something? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was the one who raised the concern about shifting to every second month, and I'm waiting to hear the full discussion. But one of the things I really want to be careful of, if we do that, that we then don't get dumped with heavily burdened agenda, so that we really just become a rubber stamp organization.
Understood.
And that's not what I'm interested in being. So if we do it every 2 months, then I understand the work and preparation is extensive. Then it means we really got to have materials spread out enough that we're not, like, our last board meeting to me was a farce. It was just a rubber stamp. We were so busy, one after the other. I personally don't want to repeat that. And if that's what it's going to be, then it's disappointing, because I don't think you get effective governance and effective support from the board or scrutiny. And our role is to be, scrutiny, right? So that would be my concern. So I'll raise that further on as well.
Thanks, Brenda. I just want to say too that we're a young organization, and there has actually been a lot of materials that have had to come forward. And I do think that from this committee, I think that we want to make sure that the agenda is very appropriate and that we're not repeating things, and that things actually go forward. But Fareed, I'm sure you want to make a comment.
Yeah, no, very, very, very quickly, and it's along the lines that you mentioned, Lynn. I mean, I think I don't have any concerns with us having board meeting every 2 months. I think it also reinforces the importance of committee meetings, right? And having the full conversation at the committee, so that when we get to the board, much of the discussion and deliberations would have occurred, and so we can facilitate a much more robust conversation there if we use the committee more effectively. I'm not suggesting we don't, but I think the committee meeting happening once, in 1 month, and then the next month, the board meeting. If the committee meeting, if we get that right, it should help with the deliberations at the board level.
Yeah, Brenda, last comment. Oh, you're on mute.
I appreciate that, but my concern is then, given our smallness of size, very few people will be discussing things in the committee and then recommending and bringing it forward, and then we rubber stamping at the board. So my concern is full exploration and discussion of these issues, and I don't see how you can get that if you're relying on the committees to do all that role, given that we have limited board members, and it's a lot to cover, and you don't get the full range of input or consultation if it's just 2 or 3 board people. So I hear your points. I remain to be convinced, and because we are new, that's the other reason I think we should meet monthly, because there is so much direction people need. That's why I would say, at least for this year, it should be every month.
So you could bring that back to the governance committee, right, Tom and Fareed, because I think that's where the schedule is coming up, and maybe there's actually some flexibility where if we need, I did see that with some other boards, that sometimes you actually need to be a little bit more flexible, that if it's looking like there's a ton that's coming forward that need that robust discussion. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Yeah, just yes, and I think we need to be in the agenda management and looking at items that are being brought forward. I think we can try and also manage the agenda in such a way that we do have the fulsome conversation that Brenda is looking for as well, which I agree with. I think you want the board to be fully engaged. So let's see how the next couple of months work, and if we need, as you said, Linda, to reconvene and have a more fulsome conversation about scheduling, we can do that as well.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Anything else, Tom?
I'm good, thanks.
Great, thank you. So I think that was for information. So I don't think that I require an approval on that. And anyone, let me know if you want me to get formal approvals. We will move now to the operational performance dashboard. And Brad, you're up.
Thank you very much. Almost forgot to take myself off of mute on my first day. So, as Tom mentioned, we're currently revamping the operational dashboard, but I'll run you through the operational measures that we have in place currently. And the dashboard represents our progress on items such as vacancy, arrears, community safety, pest control, and maintenance. With regards to the arrears, we had an overall decrease in the arrears balance.
I think we should put it up just so that people can see it. You know, I'm thinking for people that are on, do you think we could do that, Brad? Do you mind? Or somebody? Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right. So to take you through the dashboard here, the red line on the top left represents the number of households with managed arrears, which decreased. However, we had an increase in unmanaged arrears. The one thing I would say when it comes to the arrears is we had an overall decrease of just over $28,000 from the previous month. The next section is with regards to vacancies. At the end of September, there were just under 500 vacant units, and the different colors represent different areas of the city and different regions in which those are. The bottom two slides represent the work order service levels as far as the completion against a 2-day service level measure for our staff, and is broken down by regions as well as shows trends. And we had a bit of a recovery from the previous month in each one of the regions. Go to the next slide.
Just to
Go ahead. You have a question, Brenda?
Yeah. Could you just scroll back down? Okay. So the vacancy rate, could you explain, if it's appropriate, what does this represent? Is it a sign that people don't want our units? Is it a sign they're not ready? What does 500 vacant units represent in a city where people are desperate for housing? So why?
Yes. So there were some issues with regards to the city transitioned, and we transitioned into a new system. We transitioned into the home system, and as well as the city transitioned away from the old legacy system into what is known as Rent Cafe, that's provided through access to housing. And there were some issues with regards to staff and tenants and the uptake of units. So I think it was at the last meeting where we said the vacancy actually spiked in May at I believe it was 5.18%.
Mm-hmm.
We implemented and brought the vacancy management plan to the committee as far as our takeaways and some agreements that we entered into with the city to address that vacancy rate. And this just represents our progress on that.
Okay.
I believe we had a net of 230 units more occupied move out versus move in, and we had a net of 230 in the positive this month.
Yeah, and at our last meeting, we were talking about the goals for vacancy rates. I did actually have a request from one of our board members to actually maybe have a thought about what the turnover of units, like how long it actually, what's our goal for turnover of units? And I know that there's actually, you know, there would be some variation, and that might show up as a variance, but do we have any of that? And I see Tom's hand up.
Oh. Okay, well, actually, Brad, Brad, did you want to address that?
You want me to take it? Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I had another comment. Let Brad.
Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, sorry, Tom. I just saw your hand. Go ahead, Brad.
So in May, when the vacancy rate spiked, both TSHC and TCHC entered into a vacancy management plan with the service provider being the City of Toronto. And under that plan, what we're targeting is a 60-day term.
Okay.
60 days from move out, renovation, reoccupancy.
Okay.
That'll be the goal moving forward.
And will we know from this report when we've hit that? Is that actually how the vacancy rate is calculated? Those that were actually filled in 60 days?
No, the vacancy rate, is strictly the number of vacant units versus occupied units. And it is one of the metrics that we're looking at for the new and improved dashboard that we're currently working on. Yeah,
so that's one of the requests that is actually kind of having that confirmation of, are we comfortable with 60 days? And then how it's hit, and even understanding, you know, like it sounds like a long period of time, but understanding why it might take 60 days for average.
Yeah, and so through the chair, Linda, there's two things that I would just like to raise around this vacancy one as people made comments. First of all, I think Brad is understating what the team in operations has achieved. That 2% reduction is huge to bring it down in that amount of time. So they've actually met we set a target with the city for the end of December. They've already gotten below that. And so what this means, right, when you look from a systems perspective, there are now more units available for people to rent, right, to get the social housing. This is a really good news story for us. And so when you're talking about dashboard, you want a low vacancy rate because it means people are getting into the units. The second one around the 60 days, I think this is going to reach dashboard status for the board, because if we are not turning our units over within 60 days, ones that fit the criteria turn over in 60 days, the city is going to claw back revenue on that. And so and once again, the sooner you turn over that unit, the quicker somebody gets into that, and it helps your overall, your vacancy rate. So this is a kind of area where we want to make sure, the board knows the progress, and we will set targets, and you will see those, and then also the public knowing that we are meeting those.
Thanks, Tom. And I do want to actually congratulate the team on a significant, like making, headway beyond what you expected. Brenda, I see your hand up. You're on mute.
Thanks. My reason for asking this was dollars and cents. I mean, obviously arrears, we got to collect the money, and then vacancy rate, we got to get them in there so they can pay the money. So so those are my underlying reasons why I was asking some of those.
Yeah, and the reason, the reason the board has actually, we're paying very close attention to this, and like what we're seeing in terms of this direction.
And my last comment, the work order service levels, where you're showing 80% at least response, right? And it's not maybe something you can answer here, but if we are truly turning it around in, is it 2 days? And if people are complaining, I don't know what degree they are, where the tenants are, but I understand there's been some dissatisfaction with some of this. So my question is it truly 2 days, or is it misperception, or is it miscommunication? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just understood there was some concern about the responsiveness of our organization to tenant requests for service and what have you. So it may not be answered here, but I just want to, that's what I mean by nuanced analysis of the data that we have.
Yeah, and I think that's why we want to have data, because actually that can tell us, like, so as a board, are we comfortable with a 2-day turnaround, and even having data to be able to confirm that that's happening. Brad, do you want to comment at all?
Yeah, I think that the frustration comes in, and the data is in a couple of pages, whereby the staff are actually completing the internal work orders at a pace of 90% against that 2-day SLA.
Yeah.
The issue becomes when we bring in our vendors, and they're at 30% against a 2-day SLA. However, I would say that metric is not a fair metric to judge them by. Giving 24 hours notice for a vendor, you've already eaten up 50% of their time to complete it. And if it's something relating to millwork or something that has to be custom fabricated for a unit, it's going to be a couple of weeks before we're going to be able to get it in. So on the new dashboard, we're actually looking to split that out for you and make it a little more obvious as far as the staff performance versus the vendor performance. And we own the vendor performance. That is our job. And if tenants are feeling frustrated, it's our job to communicate reasonable timelines to them through the process.
Great, thank you. Do you want to scroll through the rest? Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. No, I was just going to say, I mean, splitting the service level between us and vendor, I mean, I think is an important distinction. But I don't think we got to think about that carefully, because I don't want to be seen as laying the blame someplace else. I mean, it's us who are responsible to provide a service to them. So we can talk offline about this or speak about this at our board meeting, but I'd be concerned about shining a light on the vendors, because they're not meeting our expectations for exactly the reasons that you mentioned, Brad, which is adequate notice, and then the nature of the work that they're asked to complete might be a bit more sophisticated than the work that we're asked to do internally. So anyway, just something to think about before we start splitting that information.
Yeah. Thanks, Fareed. Other comments that you wanted to make, Brad? We can keep, so you
I'll
further
just go
along,
through
we
it.
get into more detail.
Yeah, I'll just go through it really quickly. So the arrears dropped $28,341 from the previous month. Through this, most of the arrears seem to be flowing through the ACP as designed. We've had increases in the managed arrears. And the one thing that we've kind of noted off of this is that the unmanaged arrears, the average balance has dropped from $385 to $355 per account, which shows that our staff are getting involved early. And we know that early intervention is key to people paying off their arrears and keeping their housing in place and minimizing issues. The next slide relates more to the vacancies. We had 230 people move in through the month, 77 people move out. So we actually netted a decrease in the number of vacant units by 153. And across the bottom of the page, you'll see the chart with the projected percentage. This is what we committed to the service manager with. September is 3.58%. I'll let you know that currently we're sitting in the 2.5% area, which has exceeded our goal for all of 2022. And we'll continue to work to get that down. With regards to maintenance, we kind of touched on it already. The slide provides you the total number of work orders completed by across each region. It provides you the work order performance as far as service level, as well as the top categories. The one thing on here I'll note is that TSHC is 85% complete our annual unit inspection. So you notice a large increase in the number of work orders. These are work orders driven out of that annual unit inspection. During COVID, we did a very scaled back version just to check life safety equipment and things such as that. And now we're getting back and going to get on top of those repairs. And these are ones that staff have generated. These were not, tenants had not notified us of the request for these services. The next slide relates to the pest control requests. Gives you the breakdown. You can see that 37.4% of our requests are with regards to bedbug and bedbug infestation. After that, we have roaches. We provided the total number of requests for pest service at just over 2,300, with 442 units receiving a single service. In the red, we note the FTEs. I'm pleased to let you know that those reallocated FTEs, 2 of them signed back today. So TSHC will have its first ever pest technicians in-house that we will be able to get on some of this work, as well as involve them in their level of expertise in the QIP project that we've undertaken with regards to pest management. The next slide relates to the administrative requests. These are the requests that are completed by the SSCs and the TSAs, with 42.3% of those requests being with regards to assistance with annual rent review and documentation support. And we've brought our service level back up this month, back up to 61%, where we measure against our 2-day SLA for that as well. The last slide relates to the community safety unit and the data that we get from them with regards to the type of calls that they're attending to within TSHC buildings. Ms. Paris, Brenda?
Yeah.
You had your hand up?
Sorry, can you go back to the previous slide? It was just a quick. Okay, so this blue line.
Yes.
That's the 2-day.
The blue represents the yes, that blue line is the 2-day.
So 61% of the requests were met within the 2-day period?
Yes.
Okay. And is that high? Is that low? I don't know. But what does this represent? That it takes longer to deal with administrative things than it does with physical repairs? I mean,
the SSCs are getting involved in some very complicated health and wellness issues with tenants and assisting them. So when they're making these referrals to agencies and things like that, it takes time.
So this is kind of a funny little metric that really is very nuanced, because it really could be revealing other problems that tenants are having that show up here. You know, that the complexity, for example, as you say, the complexity, and that's going to increase of their needs and the time it takes. So it's, I don't know, it's almost like do we need to call it something other than administrative requests? Maybe that's
funny.
just
I was thinking the same thing, Brenda.
Yeah,
but you know, it like when you think administrative, it sounds very transactional, and this is not transactional. So maybe a thought. Good
Yeah.
idea.
And lastly, just a little thing. Could you please say things in their full, don't leave the initials like this, the service court, like I can't keep track of the SCCCSS, just please say it verbally if it's the senior service coordinator.
Thanks, Brenda. That's a really good reminder.
Yeah. And QIPs and
Yeah, maybe I'll ask Carrie if she wants to make a comment.
Yeah, I love that point you just brought up, Brenda, but I'd like to go back one slide up. That's it. Brad, I wonder if you can clarify something. That very first red bullet point says, staff have undertaken an audit of the common area and in-suite pest control application at one building within each of the 4 regions and are aggregating the findings. How does that sort of fit with it's item 4 on the action item list? Provide a list of all 83 buildings and the number of bed bug pest cases, pests in buildings to be ranked into 3 buckets: big problems, medium problems, and no problems. Is there a bit of a disconnect there, or are they 2 different things?
2 different things.
Okay.
So with regards to the report of the big problems, little problems, medium problems, we're working our way through that information right now from TCHC that we received.
Okay.
The 4 regions in the audits were a completely different thing. A member of the operations team who's a licensed pest control technician went to 4 buildings the day of and the day after treatment to evaluate the level of service that we were being provided by the vendor. Okay. And that's what that refers to. And we'll be making that, we'll be bringing that report forward along with the findings.
Okay, so the other, as you say, that your team is working through is the audit of every single building.
Yes.
And this is vendor control. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks for catching that, Carrie. That was very helpful. I didn't actually quite understand that audit piece too. So that's around the level of service. So thanks for that, Brad.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to adding staff people to assist the seniors to prepare their homes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That was always the missing piece.
Yeah.
So let's keep track of that, and whether 4 people is sufficient, whether we need other community agencies to pick up some role here, because we do have the hoarding people. Not that they're necessarily much use in some of these things, but just keep track of whether 4 is sufficient going forward.
Thanks.
It's a good start.
Thanks,
it's a good
Brenda.
start.
And we will need to look at that in a budget too. So this was a pretty big investment. But I think we really want to pay attention to the numbers. So it would be great if we could get that baseline that was requested. And I know that we're working with TCHC on that. So thanks, Brad. Do we want to continue through the presentation?
The last page is just a glossary of terms for your reference when you're reviewing the report. Great.
Yeah, and I think a good reminder for all of us, actually. I get caught too in the lingo. So thank you. I think that this is helpful to actually see the dashboard in action, the operational performance dashboard, and the questions were good. Brenda? Oh, you're on mute.
All right, go back to the last slide on safety. Yeah, community safety incidents. Okay. And I'm just having a little trouble looking at the color and stuff, but if we look at September 22, that dark red color is what?
Yeah, I had that same issue. Is it self-initiated patrols or arson?
Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that into account when we develop the new dashboard. But it is self-identified patrols. We did not have that many issues with arson last month, I'm pleased to say.
What's self-initiated patrols? I have no idea what that means.
Those are proactive patrols provided by the community safety unit.
So it's the staff, it's not the tenant. It reads like self-initiated patrols, reads like it's the tenants that are going.
Yeah, I had trouble with that one too, in terms of maybe so that's your regular patrols to all through the properties, right?
Could I suggest some numbers here? I mean, we got the colors and the bar thing, but I would I think we need to track some of this over time. And if we could put numbers, so how many incidents were antisocial, how many incidents required police, or whatever the words are. You know what I'm saying? If you could just put numbers to those things, maybe reconfiguring it as a graph of some other sort. But anyways, that's just my comment.
Yeah, and maybe the other colors too. I had trouble with the blues as well. Like it just actually, we might want to have like you know, they're small things, but I think maybe if we want the team to take a look at it, it might be good to have that. Tom, did you want to jump in?
Yeah.
Thanks for the chair. Just quickly, I just want to show how, you know, we're showing this at very high level, but for our the quality improvement project, and there will be a bit more information on this, but when you look at and with the information that we're required to be successful in that work, and what I've been saying, when I've been hearing this in pretty well every single building, that safety and security is an issue.
Exactly.
Like this will help us to determine which buildings are higher risk and in which ways are they higher risk, and therefore where do you respond? Because you know, Carrie, Brenda, you've heard it at these sessions, like the tenants, you know, they want things like 24/7 security, they want cameras, and they, you know, and so we are going to have to look at where this will help us. Where are those high risk areas, and where do we focus our resources and intent? So just wanted to add that is to see how this starts to impact our work and support tenants.
Great. So this is a great start. And thank you for doing that. Brenda, I do want to move on, but if you want to have one more comment.
Just also, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. It also can tie into staff training. If we're finding an increase in antisocial, you know, that seems to be a lot of this here. You know, where the other fellow tenants cannot cope with this person who's driving them crazy. Then it will also have impact on staff training and development, how we deal with this. And it might highlight that this is a new area that we have to put some attention on.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
You can't call the police. You can't call the police, and they won't even come on some of these antisocial things. And but it's the quality of life.
It might be helpful, Brad, like to even where there's actually a high number to note the actions. Like, you know, what are we doing to kind of address those high areas? Any other questions in terms of the format? You know, we're getting used to this a performance dashboard. I think there were some good questions, but moving forward. So I'm going to ask for an approval for information of the operational performance dashboard. Great, thank you. I think Fareed and Carrie, all in favor? Thank you. I was just getting my squares back in order. It's hard to see everybody. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, and I'm pleased to introduce Summer Noodle, who is joining us today. Hi, Summer, and is our Commissioner of our Housing, and we're going to ask you to give a report, and I think maybe just a brief introduction to yourself and the office, because this is the first time that we've actually had you come to this group.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Jackson. Thank you to the committee for inviting me here. I started with OACH in 2014 as an early resolution officer. I left in 2017 to do some other things. And then Melanie Martin, who is Cynthia's senior advisor, went on mat leave, and I came back to cover her mat leave. And this is not how I expected it to turn out, but it's a wonderful opportunity for me to learn and grow and to be back supporting the OACH, and I'm very happy to be here. I do have a little overview of the OACH mandate and sort of the work that we do, just as information. I hope that it's helpful, and then I'll just summarize the highlights of the report that you have.
Perfect. And you can call me Linda. Go ahead, Summer.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. So the mandate, as outlined in our terms of reference, states that the OACH oversees staff compliance with policies and procedures as they relate to evictions for arrears of rent or losses of subsidy, as well as compliance with applicable legislation and the City of Toronto Service Manager rules. The OACH supports successful tenancies in accordance with the terms of reference and works with TSHC and TCHC to ensure that all necessary supports and protections exist for tenants and that all reasonable avenues have been exhausted for tenants who have lost their subsidy or face it. So the OACH has three primary roles: to review files and provide assurances to the board of directors that all policies have been adhered to and that eviction proceedings are a last resort; to resolve arrears files by assisting tenants to address the arrears and reduce the number of referrals to the landlord and tenant board; and to make recommendations to staff, senior management, and to the board of directors on compliance, policy, and procedures that relate to eviction prevention and losses of subsidy. When the OACH became operational in 2014, the mandate was to serve tenants over the age of 59, and later the same year, the mandate expanded to include vulnerable tenants. There were issues with detecting vulnerable tenants because, as in some cases, vulnerabilities are hidden. A pilot project was conducted with TCHC in 2021, which indicated that vulnerabilities were still being missed. And so for this reason, it made sense that the OACH mandate was expanded again on January 1st, 2022 to include any tenant who is facing eviction due to arrears of rent prior to filing an L1 application. And an L1 application is the application that's made at the landlord and tenant board when the landlord is ready to pursue eviction due to unpaid rent. So our early resolution officers conduct a file audit and provide case management to the tenant with the aim of resolving the arrears of rent within 45 business days, which is prescribed in the terms of reference. Once the arrears have been resolved, a report is issued that goes to the tenant and to TSHC and TCHC. This report it doesn't go to both. It goes to the provider that it applies to. This report contains the audit findings, a description of the intervention that was conducted, and recommendations. These recommendations are related to the arrears collection process, to the loss of subsidy process, and to other policy and compliance. Additional recommendations are also made with respect to the specific tenant. And in cases where the early resolution officer was unsuccessful, we make a recommendation to the tenant that they should reach out to their local legal clinic in advance of any upcoming landlord and tenant hearing. Then the aggregate of these recommendations form the basis of our board reports. And through these reports, the OACH makes systemic recommendations. And as an example, in the last report to the TCHC Board of Directors, we made some recommendations related to changes to their newer arrears collection process. So the report that you have in front of you covers the period beginning June 1st, 2022 and ending October 1st, 2022. Within the report, the current numbers are compared to the beginning of 2022 and then also to the last 6 months of 2021. And I'll just highlight briefly some things from the report. In this period of time, June to October, the OACH received 33 files from TSHC. The average amount of arrears when the first N4 was served was 1,508. The N4 is the notice that's served to tenants that the landlord plans to pursue eviction at the landlord and tenant board for unpaid rent. The average arrears at the time of referral to the OACH was $3,580. And in this period, we issued 28 reports and made 61 recommendations contained in those reports. For the purpose of auditing, the OACH uses 4 theme-based audit categories, and these include administrative delays and inefficient use of resources, non-compliance with policies and procedures, unreliable internal information, and quality of service. So any findings which result from the audit of individual files are presented under one of these 4 categories. And in this period, the only significant findings fell under administrative delays, and the most prevalent of these findings was related to the service of the N4. There were no findings which fell under non-compliance with policies and procedures or unreliable internal information within this period. Under quality of service, we made the recommendation in 25% of the reports issued that in the future, staff reach out to a tenant's caseworker, family members, or other support person should issues arise with the tenancy again, And these are support people that the early resolution officers identified in the course of their case management. In addition to the regular referrals that we get, the OACH also receives referrals when one of our own brokered repayment agreements has failed. And in this period of time, we received two files with a breached repayment agreement that were re-referred to the OACH. When the OACH receives these breach files, the early resolution officer is tasked with determining whether there were exceptional circumstances warranting brokering a new repayment agreement. Of the two files received in this period, one did not have any exceptional circumstances and the other did. The exceptional circumstances in that case were related to a medical issue and hospitalization that occurred after the original repayment agreement was brokered. In this period, the early resolution officers were successful in engaging with 86% of the tenants, and of those 86%, 88% avoided the need for eviction. The OACH managed arrears in the amount of $81,143 by brokering repayment agreements, and we did collect one small payment through the Housing Stabilization Fund. Going forward, the OACH is working on making some changes to our reports and recommendation templates to include a chart form audit section, a discussion of the intervention, followed by recommendations that could be applied to all tenants in similar circumstances. And the OACH looks forward to providing reports to the board that are useful and timely. It's our plan to dive more deeply into the success of our own repayment agreements. We're interested to find out what factors exist that might predict a breach and determine what supports might be needed to ensure compliance for the life of a repayment agreement. And we plan to continue auditing files using the same theme-based audit categories. And we look forward to reporting back to the board with respect to our findings.
Great, thank you, Summer. That was a really comprehensive report. And maybe while other people are thinking about their questions, I have one question, and that is, you know, as your office now actually has a responsibility to two boards and two organizations, just actually asking you, how is it going in terms of, like, so the success of your office, from my experience, is also the relationship with the team at Senior Community Housing, and I just wonder how it's going, and you know, if there's anything that we should be aware of as a board.
No, I think that it's going well. I meet regularly with Grant and Brad, and you know, we trade experiences and brainstorm when we need to. I can't say that there's been a problem whatsoever.
That's great. Thank you. I put you on the spot there a little bit, but I think that is actually really, really important. And I think also what I've learned is actually some of the lessons that have been learned by the OACH is really important for our team members, because we actually really want to be in a situation where we're actually avoiding ever having to get you involved, right? So Brenda, over to you.
You're muted.
Brenda, you're on mute.
Sorry. Who initiates the referral or the contact, or like what starts this process? Is it 1 month behind in rent that you get referred, or is it an individual senior service coordinator? Like, what starts the whole process?
It's built into the arrears collection process. So once the tenant has been identified as having missed a rent payment, the first part of that process is that staff will attempt to resolve that issue, and then if they're unable to resolve it, then the policy is that it must come to OACH before that application at the landlord and tenant board takes place.
So is it at the first month of non-payment?
Well, it could be the first or second month, depending on how long your staff is working with the tenant. Like, if they're making progress, then we would prefer that the issues be resolved and not come to us. So.
Of course. Now, I'm just concerned about the quantity of arrears. I mean, the longer this goes on, the more arrears there is, and that's really then hard to recover after that point. So I'm just trying to get a sense of the process and how we can start this resolution of the arrears as early as possible.
Definitely, it's better if it comes sooner, and even better if it doesn't come at all. I will say that we do have a capacity issue at OACH where we've had to limit the number of referrals from TCHC and TSHC, but so far we haven't reached the capacity at TSHC yet. So it seems like we haven't hit the ceiling. But that does impact. We can only process so quickly with the staff that we have.
Yes,
I think your point is really well made, though, too, Summer, in terms of we want to actually have really proactive staff at TSHC, and it sounds like it's going well. Tom, from your perspective, in terms of the relationship with OACH.
Yeah, through the chair, Linda. Yes, I think it's a very strong relationship, and I had the chance to meet with Summer, and we just talked about that our strategy and our collective strategy moving forward, because it is that initial contact and letting the tenant know about the arrears and what we will do and what the process will be. But I also think too the role that OACH plays from this kind of objective viewpoint too. We have to know when it's optimal, kind of to use that as well. So I think I feel that it's a very strong and building relationship, and and it has been beneficial, as you see in terms of what are those kind of numbers, like the numbers that are going to OACH are reasonable at this point, and that's where we want it to stay or improve. So thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to recommend for information to the board, the OACH report, and we will be having these reports on a quarterly basis. Could I have a mover?
Certainly.
And a seconder?
Brenda.
Thank you. All in favor. Thanks a lot. Okay, and I think we'll go on to the next item, and I believe we have a deputant for this. I think we just have one deputation. Is that correct, Wendy? Yeah, so we have a deputant. So I think Bill is actually wanting to depute on the update on the quality improvement projects, if I've got that right. And do we have Bill on the line?
I am on the line. Yes.
Perfect. So Bill, you have 5 minutes, and please start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, and QTE members. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Bill Lohman. I attended the Getting Started Quality Improvement Project information session this week, along with 18 or so other interested tenants and fellow staff members. These are big issues that are demanding immediate attention, and this looks like an inclusive and coordinated approach that has a proven strategy that can bring some clarity of perspectives to a focus and purpose to address safety and security, pest control, and staff and tenant relations. And I think it's a great opportunity here that we have this opportunity to be inspired to create something positive and enduring. And as we know, teamwork is the key to that vision. To commit our positive energy to lay that groundwork. It really must attract tenants and their talents to generate a good and collaborative benefit. Looking at the model, it has housing tenant leaders will provide visible, consistent, and aligned support. Toronto Housing will provide support and information needed and requirements to deliver on the services that they're accountable for the service delivery. And then tenant leaders and staff will stand behind recommendations and work with local staff to ensure that these changes are implemented. I have a bit of an issue here, but I am working towards it, and we are setting up a small roundtable in our community to try to bring all of these different voices together, just like this model, to try to get those voices so that we have a collective vision going forward. But where I kind of have an issue is that everybody is supporting and tenants are working. I think for me that's a bit of an issue. And to give an example of the importance here, that it was kind of a disconcerting experience when I saw plumbers moving 100 crates of toilets into the Saranax recreation room that I'd been pushing to get opened to allow tenants to have some access to this 60 by 60 square foot space, because they haven't had any. And I directly requested to have a voice in the conversation about that shared space, and I was flatly told no. This raises it raises the question of accountability, being the difference between success and failure. If you want people to accept some accountability, you need to set them up to be successful. And I've raised this before. Where is the motivation for tenants to get involved in any of this? You know, no one is going to take ownership and show any accountability for something that they don't understand and likely believe is going to fail. Tenants need a full understanding of what is transpiring, and I think we're starting to do that. But we also need assurance that they are going to have everything they need in order to be successful. And again, there are steps that are being taken to start making those changes. But I'm not looking at the 4 months or the 5 months that the corporation has been in place. I'm looking at 33 months that this community has not had access to that community space. And what it does is it basically shows that it gives the bad image that the use of space for toilet storage is more important than the vital needs of senior tenants who've been isolated for almost 3 years. And then to have a just flat out no consideration for your opinion over a space, and with reasoning that is quite debatable, is unacceptable. And it really goes to the point that I sat here listening to everybody, and I'm really impressed and I'm really pleased with all the progress that's been made at this meeting. It speaks about quality.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm the only one here at this moment who is addressing the tenant engagement side. And isn't that just as important? To this, it is the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for, I hear mixed comments there in terms of thank you for the support of the work that is happening, and for a very specific example that maybe we could actually have staff follow up offline in terms of storing of toilets in a common space. I think, you know, I'll leave that with you. I hear your point in terms of the engagement, and this committee will at times be focused on some of the quality metrics, and we'll be looking at engagement as well. Is there any clarifying comments from any board members or comments from any of the staff? Carrie, were you wanting to say something? No. No, okay, okay. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate your deputation. Let's hear the report on the quality improvement projects, and we'll keep this in mind as we go forward. And I think, Grant, you're presenting on this.
Yes, thank you, Linda, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to provide a verbal update on for item 14 on the quality improvement projects first. And then take any questions, and then I'll move to a quick update on the interim strategic directions, if that's okay, for this item. So as was just mentioned in the in the deputation that Bill provided, we have 3 quality improvement projects, 1 on pest management, 1 on safety and security, and 1 on staff and tenant relations. And in terms of the status for these projects, just to give a bit of an update. So at the previous meeting, if you recall, Mary provided an overview of these projects. Mary is here as well if there are detailed questions, but I'll just provide a bit of an update. So a draft terms of reference has been developed associated with the approaches, the suggested approaches for each of these 3 quality improvement projects. And we're looking to establish the teams, and there was some reference made a moment ago to those teams being including tenants, TSHC staff, the leadership and sponsors, and some TCHC staff. So those teams are being formed and established, and the tenant information session I'll talk about in a moment. We're also developing an information package, and research is underway associated with gathering information to support each of the projects. So we're looking at the available data for each, and some of those data points were discussed earlier around the dashboard as an example. But there's other data points, and we're also looking at research in terms of other jurisdictions' best practices. This information package will be brought forward to the teams as they come together to start the work. And then we do expect, and this was some of the feedback we heard at the information session on Monday, that there may be additional data points and other pieces of information that might be relevant that we could follow up once the teams are actually together and working. In terms of the approach to the project that was proposed, and this was in the material in the last meeting, but I'll just quickly highlight, there's a project launch that would include going over the role of the quality improvement project team itself, how the approach will work, get some feedback from the team. The team will talk about how they'll work together, and then they'll go over the background information. Then there'll be a focus on the current situation and actually looking at having a discussion on where things are now, what has been done, current processes, practices, what is working, what isn't working. And we know that there are, obviously, through the listening tour and the feedback, there are specific things that need to be discussed there. Then we'll talk about the desired future, or the future state. So where do we want the future to be? What are the gaps between where we are now? And then how do we look at closing those gaps? So what types of things could close those gaps? So then we'll look at developing an implementation plan associated with that and prioritize that. So what are the priority actions and timelines for improvements? And that'll help guide how we measure success over time. And then finally, ensuring success or in the longer term, we're going to look at how we support and monitor the implementation and how we'll adjust the plan if necessary so it moves forward and we continue to bring that back. And some of that will be through the dashboards and others, but we'll go through and actually develop more specific pieces to that. So that's the approach that's been proposed. We're currently retaining a facilitator to support the quality improvement project. So that's bringing on board a consultant to help support that. We've done a procurement for that, a request for a quote, an RFQ was completed, and we're finalizing the results now. And we're hoping to have the facilitator on board shortly for this important work. As was mentioned in the deputation, we did hold a tenant information session earlier this week on October the 24th to provide an update and seek expressions of interest and opportunities for tenants to ask questions about the projects. As was noted, there were roughly 18 to 20 tenants. It was a blend of tenants from across different regions. Some of them were on stack, and others were new to these types of conversations. So it was good to have that. We received some good feedback at that session about the approach and some questions, types of information to consider, even some initial ideas about how to improve things. So that was really good. And some tenants actually expressed interest in supporting one or another of the quality improvement projects themselves. And we are requesting that tenants provide their expressions of interest by next week. And then we're hoping to get the structure in place for these projects to move forward. We're also aligning the support of staff resources within TSHC right now, our own team and different levels within our staff, and also the resources that were noted from TCHC to help support this. The timeline, so the pest management quality improvement project is scheduled to start in early to mid-November. The safety and security quality improvement project later in November, and then the staff and tenant relations to start in early January. And in terms of sponsorship from the leadership team and within TSHC, for the pest management project, Brad Brigham will be the sponsor for that one. For the safety and security project, quality improvement project, it'll be myself. And then for the staff and tenant relations, it'll be Dave Slater, who's our interim lead for people and culture, our HR team. And then overall, our plan is to work through this process that I noted, the 5 steps, and conclude these quality improvement projects in that context by roughly the Q1 and Q2 of next year, noting that it'll be all done within approximately 6 months. For the future meetings, we'll bring forward a more structured written update, but I wanted to provide a verbal update on behalf of the work that's ongoing. This is a priority, and I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you for that summary. Brenda. No, you're on mute. We're going to have to press that mute button for you.
I'm never going to get this right. It's the double negative. That's why it's an unmute, right? So, are there any low-hanging fruit here that we could look at for quick successes to show some goodwill? I mean, don't mean to artificially pose things, but the devil's always in the details and the implementation of things, you know, and I'm just wondering, of the 3 areas you identify, which are key areas, I would agree with, is there any steps or any solutions or any, I call them low-hanging fruit, that we can demonstrate to show our commitment to these measures? And I don't know what they would be.
I see Tom and Mary's hands up, so I have a feeling they've got a response to you. Tom? First?
Sure. Just Brenda, you're right around the low-hanging fruit, and we understand that this is, you know, the quality improvement process is really it's the formal way to make sure we're looking at these in totality. But for example, using pest management, you know, we've gone ahead and reallocated resources to bring on staff to start to address we know that the company is not doing as thorough a treatment in certain areas as they can, so have somebody monitor that. You know, reallocating the resources for staff to assist in moving the furniture for the seniors. So where we are seeing that, we are moving on it. And I think that should be something in our correspondence around these projects, is that we're not waiting for them to complete. Where we're seeing, and for example, staff-tenant relationships, translation, right? We know that we have to work on that so staff can better relate to the tenant. So listening to us as an example. So yep, there is low-hanging fruit that as we see it or people raise it, can we move on it and then help that to inform the project?
So are we communicating that to tenants? So this is what we're doing? So I mean, I'm just wondering when there's a communication issue. Like, are we
could probably do more of that? I just
I'm just wondering, because I'm trying not to burn out people with consultations. You know what I mean? Like we want feedback, and that's good, but there's a balance act here, isn't there? You know, where you don't want to. You know.
Yeah, sounds like there was good engagement though. So Mary, did you want to comment?
Very quickly, we did in the meeting with tenants tell them that we were proceeding with work, and told them what work was underway so that they know we're not doing nothing until these projects get underway. So that was definitely communicated at the meeting. And all I wanted to say is that once we do get all the ideas of the ways that we can tackle these problems, there are almost always some short-term things that can happen fairly quickly, and then there are other things that are longer term. And often what we do is we put them in a matrix, so you have short-term high impact, longer-term high impact, and it kind of tells you which things to focus your attention on. So I think that would be part of the work of the committees to make those kinds of assessments about what can be done quickly and have an impact on what things are going to take longer.
So is it the committee that determines the priorities, or is it going to come back to management and or board?
Well, I think that some of the items will definitely have resource implications, so they will have to come back to management and the board, but we would be looking to the committees to come up with a whole range of ideas and suggest which ones would be the priorities.
So we will be hearing more, Brenda, and I think that that's the beauty of this QI approach, is that we're not talking about developing a long report. We're actually talking about going in and starting to make change ideas and bringing it forward. Grant, is there anything else that you had the interim strategic directions to, but anything else you wanted to update on the QI?
Nothing on the quality improvement projects. And if I can quickly move into the interim strategic directions,
great.
That would be great. So thank you. So on the interim strategic direction, so just to take us back, so at the last committee and last board meeting as well, there was a presentation and discussion on an approach to take in the development of, at that time, was a strategic plan, and Mary brought that forward. And then there was subsequent discussion on that with the city as well as a follow-up. So subsequent to that, all of that, there was a direction to develop an interim set of what we're now characterizing as strategic directions. So not a full-blown strategic planning process. So this would be a scaled down process based on leveraging and using a lot of the work that's already been done or is in progress. So for example, the Health Commons report on health and wellness and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The work that's been done and is ongoing on the integrated service model. The work that was done and upcoming on the new tenant engagement model, which I'll talk a little bit about, the listening tour and other inputs, not just those. So there are a lot of opportunities that have already taken place with tenant feedback and engagement that will help support that. So with this interim strategic directions, we'll be developing a high-level framework to draft a vision, mandate, values, strategic objectives, strategic initiatives, and ultimately it'll manifest in a roadmap for implementation. So this will be the structure that we'll bring forward. Mary, who's on the call, and we all know, will continue to be supporting this work as we move forward. And we also have some additional resources that we've been able to get to help support this work as well. It's a fairly short-term initiative between now and roughly early 2023, January, February, to have this in place. So not a long process. The intent is to still work on the development of the interim strategic directions with some staff and tenant opportunities for consultation. However, those will be limited. And this was what was part of what was discussed in those previous meetings. However, we will ensure that the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, STAC, is involved. We are planning to have a board workshop / orientation session on this in early December. So a session for the board in early December on the interim strategic directions. And we're also going to include the governance work plan for a bit of that as well. To more fully discuss this item in a broader context with the board and have an opportunity for that discussion. And then the goal with all of this is to put in place a set of interim directions that would be over a time period of 12 to 18 months. And we would follow up next year with a review of what would make sense in terms of moving forward at that time. So I'll open it up for any questions on this one at this stage.
Thank you. And just before Brenda goes, will this come back to this committee before it goes to the board? And I'm looking at Vahir too in terms of how we're going to the process for this one rather than the content.
So the strategic planning or it's under the purview of this committee.
Yeah.
We haven't yet got the timeline set for the next meeting here. So I think we'll probably bring it directly to the board workshop. But Mary, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I think that's probably the way it'll work at this stage.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the reason I'm saying that is it is without a written document, it feels like a lot of verbal information at this point to be able to actually action. But so I'm just trying to actually get my head around that.
We can put together a summary view for this committee as a follow-up to this meeting of what I've just gone over to help provide a little bit more of a structure to the update, if that would help.
I think that might. Brenda? Oh, you went on mute.
The facilitator. Has the person been hired?
Not yet. So the process is in its final stages.
Okay.
To bring them on board.
And do we have the money for this? I mean, I'm asking because I'm getting a little frustrated because I never know, well, when is it a staff responsibility? When do we have to get outside resources to do things? So obviously someone made a judgment call here that we needed extra resources to do this. So I'm just always cautious about hiring consultants. So I just want to make sure that there's clarity of reasoning for this. And so it was felt that it couldn't be done in-house. It needed the assistance of outside people.
Tom, do you want to respond to that?
I think Grant may have, but I'll jump in, and then Grant or Mary. So in this case, it was minimal, Brenda.
Okay.
It was kept under $10,000, so we didn't even go through the process.
That's
We just approached people. So it is minimal, and we wanted to do it. We wanted to do it in 2022 because 2023 there are the incredible financial pressures, and
That's
so.
right.
We had to move this forward quickly, and hence even part of the verbal report, right? This is kind of moving at warp speed.
Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciate that. I want to be able to support it, and so that the committee can actually do that. Mary, I know your hand was up. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, not really. Just on the strategic planning, we are well along in reviewing all the documents for input and starting to put together a frame. For the workshop, like I think it would be better to have a board workshop so that you really have some time to focus on it. Linda, if you want to have a look at the material that we're preparing for that ahead of time and give us your input, happy to work that through with you.
Great. Thank you. I think we want to be supportive of the process, and I do appreciate that things are happening in warp speed, as you said, Tom. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else you wanted to mention on that one, Grant?
I don't have anything else on that item.
Okay, great. So thank you. And I do think that this is actually a good follow-up from the board discussion around strategic priorities and directed, and so that we actually do have that roadmap. Okay, so that item was for information. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we've got Grant on for a few items. I think we want to have it, and many of these items, I think, speaking to the dense agenda that we had at the last meeting, and this is actually some briefer follow-ups, but we will be having some more discussion around these items as well. So the next one is the update on the Health Commons report on seniors' health and wellness initiatives.
Yes, thank you, Linda. As we know, at the last Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee meeting and board, Health Commons with the city supporting the conversation and helping with that, brought forward their report on the Seniors Health and Wellness Initiative. It was very well received, and we know this is an important guide for future actions. And part of the discussion and what was brought forward at the last meetings was included that we would develop an action plan within Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. And that report, as we know, also included significant tenant engagement and input from STAC. It's a very important report. There were 34 recommendations in the report, 4 themes. I won't go through them all here, but there's a substantive number of actions that are articulated in that report that need to be worked through in more detail. So in terms of where we are, we have not yet developed an action plan. So I want to make that clear. We have not started in any detail the development of an action plan, but I did want to have an opportunity, and we did want to have an opportunity to provide an update on the fact that we are planning to start discussions on developing a process to build the action plan. One of the pieces that we're doing right now is we've started to review those actions in light of current state and other initiatives that are going on right now or planned. Because a number of the actions in this particular report do cross different themes and areas, as we know, and some of the things that we've already talked about here today cross with those, for example. So we're working on preparing a view of that to help be an input into the action plan development. We will also be engaging with the city, with the senior services and long-term care team. And I know that some of them are on the Jennifer and Andrea and Joseph are all on the call with us here today, showing support for this. So I want to express and say thank you to them for joining us for this item here today. And we'll work together, as we noted in the when the reports went to board. The report, went to board, that we'll work in consultation with the city and the city team on this as we move forward. There is intent to further discuss approaches to engage stakeholders and as well further our Senior Tenant Advisory Committee as well in the development of the action plan. So we'll be discussing that in the context of future STAC meetings that are upcoming, for example, and how we can integrate some conversations in there. And then ultimately, I wanted to just note that we see the plan from these actions and other actions coming out of different initiatives aligning into this interim strategic directions implementation roadmap that I just spoke of. And this will be a place where we see them all coming together as our goal ultimately in that process, so that we can align and understand how we're tracking towards these different individual reports and actions, but also how they come together in an integrated way. And ultimately, so we're not losing or anything's falling through the cracks. So we'll bring those all together. Mary mentioned a moment ago how, you know, the document review, and that's part of that process at this stage and where we are. So I just wanted to highlight to the quality and tenant litigation, to the members of the committee, where we are. We're in the early stages of working on the development of an action plan on this, but it is a piece of work that we're starting to move forward on.
Thanks, Grant. So do you think the next meeting we would have an update, somewhat of an update?
I think, yeah, I think we will be able to bring an update definitely for the next meeting. And I think you'll see it'll be something that will be informed by some of the other work that I've spoken of as well.
Jennifer, please jump in, and then I'll go to Brenda. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to put it out there that Grant, our team, is available to work with you on actually standing up some items around the action plan so that we get past the planning stage and actually have some tangible pieces that we can confidently say that we're going to move on. And I think it'd be good if we could do that before the end of the year.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, Grant. And you know, like this report was just so pivotal and so well received by people. And I think actually knowing where our work aligns with it, with like it kind of intersects with the strategic priorities, and it intersects with all of the other work that we're doing. Brenda, I'll open it up to you.
The Health Commons report, they reported to us. Was that their final report, or was there something subsequent? Okay, could we have it resent to us, because I got it somewhere, but I didn't realize it was the final report. And lastly was, now this report was asked for by city, but was it Toronto Community Housing or by the city? Was it City Council that requested this? I can't remember. So where,
and Andrea's there too, if you want to.
Okay, so how does it relate to us? You know, like, are we to take our directions from it, even though we didn't ask for the report, right? And
it's a good question. Andrea or Jennifer, do you want to speak to how it all, and Grant, how it all actually affects rollout?
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll start. And Joseph, if you want to pipe in, you can, because you're more closely involved at the ground level.
But Andrea, you're from where? From what department?
I'm from I work with Jennifer and Joseph. I'm at Senior Services.
Senior Services. Okay.
Senior Services.
Yeah. I'm just wondering who all these people are.
Yeah.
Right?
Sorry. We're all
they've been with us with all of the reports.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of the team, Brenda.
Well, yeah. That's right. So in December of last year, Council directed us to do a review of the seniors health and wellness model. So we engaged Health Commons and brought that report forward to you. I mean, I don't want to go too far to telling the board what they should do, but presumably you would want to see action on those recommendations.
Yeah, particularly because they were so informed by the tenants themselves, right?
Well, and it speaks to this whole concept of the community development. I mean, that's the words I would use of what they were tapping into, how you engage people in their community, and like any other community, right? And we've tended to forget those things just because they happen to be seniors with subsidized housing. So,
and we're very fortunate that if you recall the report, and when you see it, you'll see like it was very laid out.
Yes.
Potential for action. I think it's actually now sort of thinking about how do we actually do this in the midst of everything else operationally, and to not lose that kind of richness that we got, right?
Yeah. And I think very much as Tom had said earlier, if we can just find some of the low-hanging fruit, which I believe there is, and action some of those, I think that'll go a long way to helping us to continue to build the credibility that we've started to build with the tenants and confidence.
Yeah. Okay. As always, I'm just always concerned about so many consultation streams and overburdening people, and it's often the same people who take responsibility and involvement, but we have to be cognizant of that.
Once people have put their time and energy into something and they feel that their voices have been heard, they're now going to be for some action out of that, right?
Exactly.
What are you actually doing with what I told you that I felt needed to be done?
Yes, we will lose a lot of credibility if we don't action this report, because it was, like so many people were involved with it. So that would be great, actually. And like, I think, even realizing as we have this conversation, even how we actually document it too is going to be the challenge and opportunity. Great, thank you. Grant, any other comments around that?
Just a great discussion, and we're on track with the same. We want to see this move forward as well. So there are pieces of work that are underway that already align into that report, and things we can do in the short term as well, similar to other discussions we've had here today. So it won't all be in the long term, that's for sure.
Oh, great. So an action would be bringing it back with a little bit more tangible. So that's great.
Yes. So we'll bring that back with a more structured update as well.
Great. And then you're on for one more item, which is the tenant engagement model update. Another important.
You can't get rid of me yet. Yes.
No.
At least not in this meeting. I'll just go through the tenant engagement model update. So as you recall, back in June, actually, there was a report brought forward on the principles and methods for a tenant engagement system, recommendations from the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, and also known as the Joy Connolly report to some. Which went to the June 13th Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee and the June 30th board meeting. And in that report, some very important principles about the future for the development of a tenant engagement model were included. I won't go through all of them here. I do have a summary of them, and I could provide those out if it would be helpful to the committee as a follow-up, summarizing some of the key things that were in there in that report. What I will mention is that particular report, similar to the report we just talked about on Health Commons, but that other report will serve as an input into the next steps associated with that work as well, and the development of a new tenant engagement model for Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. So currently we're in a process, and this was something was articulated previously when this came forward, to retain resources to help support the development and the further creation of the new tenant engagement model. So we've got an RFP that we are finalizing to release soon to bring in resources to help support this. Funding has been allocated for this, to actually do a best practices jurisdictional scan on this, look at the report that was done, further engage tenant leaders and staff on this, and looking to work with tenants to finalize and actually develop a model and some of the supporting context to implement the model, and bring it all back to this committee and ultimately the board in early 2023, probably around the end of Q1. It would come back here once we've gotten through that process. I wanted to mention that here because it is an item that hasn't had discussion here, and I know it's of great interest to this committee as well, and was mentioned earlier actually as an item in the deputation. So this is something that we are moving forward on concurrently as well, bringing in additional support to do this work. And we feel this is another priority that obviously needs to have some focused engagement on. In the interim, and starting before the end of this year, though, we are working to support tenant leaders across the regions and in our buildings, and establishing some interim tenant representative meetings to help support and inform this upcoming process. Because we are hearing, for example, in listening tours and other opportunities where we hear from tenants that the tenant reps and leaders need more understanding of what's happening and how they can be supporting their tenants and actually supporting these processes. So we'll be starting up some of those interim meetings to help support this process this fall. So we're not waiting until we have the RFP completed and the resources on board to start the work to the point of actually moving things along. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on this as well for the committee if there's any questions.
Great. Any questions? And I know it's hard to actually keep track of all of these reports. So I think it will be really important for us to actually kind of summarize in the minutes and have some really clear actions going forward in terms of breaking them out, because both of them are actually really important areas for this committee to be able to track. And it's sometimes hard to actually follow everything. Brenda, I see your hand up, and Carrie and Jim, you're welcome to actually add to the dialogue as well.
Have we made a decision as to what format or form that the tenant leadership will take? I mean, we've had Stack, we have other reps in different buildings. Have we decided what form this tenant engagement representation model will look like?
Brenda, through the chair, we have not yet made that decision. So
Okay,
this is a process to move forward on the work that has been started and
yeah,
take it ultimately to a recommendation so a decision can be made and implementation.
okay, okay. And my second point there is, and I don't know if this is the right place that I want to raise it. I've raised in previous discussion in talking about community development models. And I've raised the issue of tenant self-management. Now, I know we have a long way to go before that can happen, but it's not unheard of. And there's other jurisdictions that do that, where you look at tenant managed buildings. Okay, now obviously we have accountability measures and sign off responsibility of the city. But if you look at housing co-ops, for example, that are self-managed, I mean, can we keep in mind, particularly if we develop this concept of a community and community development model, that there may come a point in time when some buildings, not all, but some buildings might be suitable to have a tenant managed building. So that's just, I'm calling that a goal, or, you know.
I think Carrie's been on a lot of those meetings. I mean, this is actually the discussion that is happening at Stack, Brenda, in terms of exactly, you know, the different models that
that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I think, you know, we don't need to be a dead horse that's maybe hasn't worked for us in the past. Maybe we need something different. I'm just raising it. I have no fixed position on it, but I think it might be one way to conceive of how do you get tenants involved and get tenant buy-in. Well, if they're actually responsible, guess what? People will actually kind of buy in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Tom?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't want the committee to lose sight that we also are going to have recommendations from the city around the integrated service model and what we should be doing to make adjustments and accommodations. So we have the Joy Conley report, we have the Health Commons report, we're going to have the ISM review, and so, you know, as staff, we will be making forward kind of recommendations on those actions, but we'll certainly appreciate, right, this committee's perspective on guiding us through that as we make sure that we are communicating clearly about these processes and the actions that we're taking, and that is, you know, on top of, as you know, the day-to-day operations. So it's just a reminder that these have all kind of, you know, they're all kind of funneling at once, and I just think we need to keep the perspective on this. It's so thank you.
Yeah,
and who will be doing the ISM review? Who will be doing that?
Joseph is helping us on that. He's
And
been
who's
this has been working behind the scenes in Andrea. So it's there.
Because
just wanted to give a heads up so that there's more layers here.
Because technically Health Commons was supposed to report on that, and they broadened their final report to include other
no,
things.
they're separate, Brenda.
They're separate.
Yes, I know.
Have a presentation on the differences.
Okay.
I think that your comments are actually well taken, because I think that it is actually challenging to keep these three. There's three reports that overlap, really.
Right.
You know, and I think that anything that our team can do to help us to actually feel like we actually are staying on top of these three initiatives that are critical to the success of our work would be helpful. Carrie?
Can I
let Carrie jump in, please?
I think I was able to raise this in the last meeting with Joseph and Stack. The fact that these reports are kind of dovetailing and have a lot of commonalities is a fabulous thing, because we're not working with three giant chunks of cement that can't you know, merge. This is really the best news possible to come out of all of the work that's gone into the three distinct reports.
Yeah, I agree with you. Joseph, please jump in.
Just to respond quickly to Carrie, you really hit the nail on the head, and it is our intent as the city to have our own ISM evaluation report, build on the incredible work with the Joy Connolly report, with the Health Commons report, and kind of reflect and represent the culmination of that work over the first year of implementation of this model, and to really identify a promising path forward with respect to ISM delivery. So thanks for identifying that, Carrie.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions for people around the tenant engagement model and these three presentations that the grant gave us? This is going to continue to be our work on this committee, and we're not going to stop till we ever, because it's going to actually just keep developing. Grant, yeah.
Linda, I'm just wondering, I know there's one more item on the agenda after this. And I just wanted, you had noted up earlier in the meeting, possibly a short update on the listening tour, which we haven't yet had a chance to provide. So I just wanted to flag that if there's time, I can give a short update before the meeting concludes.
Sure, thank you, thank you. With the permission of other people on the line, we can do that. And I think we've actually already done the discussion of the upcoming meetings, because I think we're going to have something come back to us. Is that correct, Tom? So I think we're okay with that one. Is there anything else that we wanted to mention with the meetings?
So Linda, just except that it will go through the corporate governance.
Yes, right, right.
Yeah, so people have their
right.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we will get to those dates, and I think the dates for if we're going to have a strategy workshop, the sooner that we get it in our calendars, the better, right? So, because as somebody said, better to do it in this year. So maybe that just leaves a minute or two for the update on the listening tour. And thank you. We have been getting notification of them, and I appreciate that.
So just really quickly, I'll just highlight that Tom has been out to about 30 buildings to date. Before the end of the year, based on the schedule, he'll have been to 45 buildings, and which is great. The tours go up till December the 16th. Then there'll be a bit of a break, and they reconvene in around January 9th. And then the remaining buildings will be completed by around April of next year. There's been a lot of discussion about having translation and interpretation support to help make these successful sessions with the tenants. Just to give a bit of a sense, so far out of the 30 buildings, 11 of those have had interpreters participating in those events. And for the remaining buildings so far, we have 23 more interpreters planned across 18 buildings. Part of the work we're doing is working with our site staff and our senior services coordinators to help get a bit more guidance around whether interpreters might be a benefit in a community. We do have some data, and there's opportunities to work on the improvement of language data, but we also have people on the ground to help us give us that insight. So we're leveraging that. So we're going to be looking at process to improve the language data. There's the Wellesley report and some other things that were mentioned previously in some of these forums, but I wanted to let this table know that progress is going well on the listening tour, and we're looking forward to continuing. And I don't know if Tommy, if you want to add anything from your most recent visits.
Good job, Grant. That's good. I am really enjoying it. That's all.
Great. And Jim, you wanted to comment?
To say that I'm looking forward to attending the tour on Friday.
We'll see you on Friday, Jim.
Yeah, finally I get a chance to go. I hadn't wanted to take a vacation day for every visit, but I certainly wanted to take one for this one.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And thank you, Tom. And I know that it's a whole team that's going out to these. You're actioning what we wanted to see, is making that early contact. And it sounds like the feedback is actually really helpful in terms of guiding the work that we're doing and confirming some of the direction, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Brenda.
Just to support the listening tour, I've been to a couple, and this Friday I'll be at one of them. And how important it is. It's like real it seems simple, but it's that whole thing of representation, of being present, people seeing you, and people really do appreciate it. So, Tom, kudos to you and the staff for doing that, and I appreciate it.
And thank you to you, Brenda, for attending as well as a board member. So I think we are just getting to the end of our agenda. Before we finish, it does look like Councillor Fletcher wasn't able to make it to today's meeting. So I just wanted to actually say before the meeting ends, congratulations to Councillor Fletcher, who, as people know, was reelected in her position. And we know that one of the things that she holds dearly is to actually be very present and an advocate for the tenants and the seniors tenants. So our best to Councillor Fletcher, and hopefully we'll be able to see her at the next meeting and congratulate her in person by this silly Zoom model.
She had the largest re-election variance.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. That's amazing.
And Paul also had
Yes, and congratulations to Paul. Paul's not on our committee, but congratulations to Councillor Ainsley as well. So we're lucky to be supported. And I just want to, before we end the meeting, I'll call for an adjournment. If somebody could move that we adjourn.
This was a great meeting.
Oh, thanks, Carrie. And a seconder, I can assume that was
okay.
And
sure, it was
Brenda. And
thank you.
And great meetings only happen because of all the people. Thank you to the members from the city who came to the meeting and participated, and all of the seniors meeting, the seniors group, and Summer. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
everyone. Letting me attend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good chair, Linda. Good chairing.
Yes, yes, indeed.
You got it done on time.
Right.